So one of the greatest teachers that we have is nature. All the teachings are in nature. One of the teachings that nature is giving at the moment is all the honeybees are dying, right? And such a powerful teaching, and because it's all the farm honeybees, the honeybees that are being loaded into trucks and moved from place to place. Those are the ones that are dying. And so with the scientists and the farmers and the insect people, they're all trying to figure out what's happening. You know, is it mold? Is it the insecticides? You know, what is happening? Well, actually, if you there was no point of reference for it in the historical means of measuring solar flares. And that solar flare, the lights, you know, the northern lights were seen all the way down into Mexico. I remember being in Arizona in that night and watching the northern lights. It was just extraordinary. And if that flare had impacted the planet directly, because it went past us, but it was a trigger, it was an initiation, because our emotional development and the sun are not separate, right? I am the light of the world. What is that? I am the light of the world. What's the light of this world? Something happened. There was an explosion into an emotional awareness. And since then, we've become increasingly aware of the role emotions play in our human experience. And now there are all sorts of modalities and approaches to the emotional body on the planet. And every one of them are valid and are contributing to our emotional body awareness as a species. But the thing about the emotional body awareness, we entered from the mental awareness, right? So we're just going to get this done and carry on with something else, right? And we approach the emotional body through the mental body because that's been our development. You'll see, we were speaking about last night the pathway of awareness. The pathway of awareness, we as a species are moving along the pathway of awareness the same way we would move individually once we're awakening authenticity, integrity, intimacy. So we saw how we enter this experience of the world through the emotional of childhood. First of all, the vibrational of the womb, the emotional of childhood, the mental of the teenage years, the very physical experience of the adult. But as a species, we are moving backwards along that pathway of awareness. As a species, on our timeline, first it was very, very physical. Fire, food, shelter, warmth, right? Breeding, that's it. Very physical experience. And that went on for a very, very long time. Then we entered the mental experience, tools, right? Farming. And then we got into industrial. And then now, now we're in the peak, the computer, iPod, all that stuff, right? We're really, that's all the incredibly mental development. And now we go into the emotional. We're in the emotional. And the emotional is what bridges us, prepares us for the vibrational. And so, the physical we want to be able to contain. The mental body is fantastic for navigating and for information. Information is very useful because it's what the word says, to move in formation, right? To move information with each other, information is very useful for that. The mental body is, the dysfunction of the mental body is thinking. There's nothing to think about. Nothing is ever accomplished through thinking. And when we realize that, we realize how funny thinking is, right? Because either we know or we don't know. But thinking doesn't actually bridge the barrier. What bridges the barrier is entering an experience of what it is we're trying to find out and having a physical, mental, and emotional experience, and that will bring us the knowing. But sitting at a desk thinking about it, right? So now we're in the emotional component of our experience. And it's a very challenging part of the experience because it appears to us like something is wrong. And we approach the emotional encounter as if something is wrong. And this is possibly one of the reasons why one of the biggest industries in the world at the moment is the pharmaceutical industry. Because one of the things the pharmaceutical does is it places a kind of block and filter on between the emotional body and the mental and physical experience. So I'm unable really to have an authentic emotional experience. And it's using chemicals to filter that and to almost redesign the experience so that I can have an experience I would rather be having. So in one tablet, you can sedate and control and manipulate and add another experience on top of that, right? And so to look at our development through the emotional part, it's really because it's very difficult for the mental body to cope with this part of the journey because it's really not that involved. And going from being God to not being that involved is it's a struggle, right? So the journey of awakening the emotional body is organic. It's all organic. And what's important to realize is the mental part of the work is completed. We're still struggling to do we think there's something more to understand, right? Now the only thing is direct experience of what's going on, not understanding it. Only direct experience is going to quench the thirst that we have at the moment. So if we look at a plant, a good analogy of this is a peach tree, right? Let's take a peach tree that is this big, right? And this peach tree gets to read a book on enlightenment, right? The book says, you are really a peach tree, and you will have peaches. Peach tree reads the book and gets to the end of the book and says, okay, well, I want the peaches. Where's the peaches? I want the peaches now. Why can't I have peaches now, right? And that's the way we are. We read a book on enlightenment, or whatever it is we call it, and we want it. I want it when I want it, and I want it now. Why can't I have it now? Right? Because that's the way the mental body is. The mental body perceives itself as completely alone in the universe. And it has to take control and run everything because it's completely by itself. Right? It's a kind of a dictator. Right? So the thing about a peach tree is, if that peach tree gave rise to peaches at that size, it would destroy itself. When a peach tree is full of peaches, the weight of those peaches is extraordinary. If you've ever picked fruit, you'll know how heavy one basket of fruit is and how many baskets of fruit you can get off one tree, right? So the first thing the peach tree has to do is really root itself into the ground. Right? It's going to carry this weight, and there's going to be wind blowing and everything, and it's got to root itself. It's also going to receive sustenance through its roots. Really root itself into its experience. And then it has to grow a trunk that's strong enough and flexible enough to be able to contain this weight, the weight of all the branches and everything, plus the weight of this fruit. And also to keep the fruit up off the ground, to hold the fruit off the ground. If the fruit's like lying on the ground, it's going to mold. It's going to rot very quickly. It'll get exposed to all sorts of insects and things and then to develop all these branches, all these networks, right? And the branches and the networks, that's really our mental development. All of this mental development we do. What we do is we set up, that's why every part of our journey is valid. It's just to realize when that part of the journey is completed. The one thing about thinking is that it develops it doesn't accomplish anything but developing the mental pathways. But in of itself, it's not going to bring us what we require. It's just going to develop us the capacity to contain it. Right? So we develop all the branches, and then the branches have leaves. And it's important to have enough leaves, because with the leaves we can start taking in light. Right? Taking light. And then, once all that's developed, a really strange thing starts to happen. Right? These growths start coming out that look alien to everything else, right? The flowering, the budding and the flowering starts to happen. And this is the emotional development, felt aspect of our experience, when we begin to flower, right? And the thing about it, as soon as we begin to flower, we run for the pharmaceuticals. Because it's such an alien thing to us that we would rather have it shut down. So we go through the flowering part of the process. And of course, we've read the book, You Should Just Be. Just be, right? We see people that say, just be now, right? And it's very difficult because we try and go and be. We might go and see someone who's great at being and sit in their presence while they just be there. And while we're in their presence, we can be there. And it's wonderful to just be there. And then we walk out and the experience dissipates, right? Go back home and the next thing we're in our reactionary behavior again, it dissipates, because being is a capacity that we develop. Right? It's also given. And we get the understanding of being before we develop the capacity. So when the plant is flowered and the flowers are fully open, what happens? The bee comes along, right? Bzzz. That's when the being begins. The being doesn't begin before the flower is open, right? And also, the tree has nothing to do with the being. The being is given, right? The tree doesn't say, hey, I'd have so many bees come today and so many bees tomorrow, and you stay here this long, and this is the flower you take care of. It's a complete surrender. And in that being, the state of being is the pollination, right? That's a very challenging state for us, because it's what we were speaking last night about, the doldrums, where there's nothing to do about whatever I'm being with. There's nothing to do about it. Being with it pollinates the situation. And that will then give rise to the fruit. Right? There is a certain amount of pollination to take place. And all of this is organic. It doesn't matter how well I understand it. Understanding it doesn't make it happen quicker. And also, the peach tree isn't alone in the universe, right? It's not up to the peach tree how all this unfolds. It's up to the earthworms and the soil and the breeze and the other weather circumstances and the sun and the rain and the farmer and the butterflies and the birds, right? All of these are playing a part in the journey. The mental body doesn't perceive that to be so. The mental body just, I want it now and it's just about me and I'm just going to get it done and get myself enlightened and move on, right? So it's really the emotional body part of the work. We have to realize that as I impact, if I authentically impact my own emotional condition, I am impacting everything around me. When I truly make that shift within myself, it is radiating into all my experiences. And when I really see that experientially, that's when I'm less likely to interfere with others, to try and fix other people, to run around trying to save the world. Right? The world doesn't need to be saved. Right? It'll go on long after we're left. It doesn't need saving from us. Right? But if I go into my experience authentically and transform the causal points that are causing me to manifest fear, anger, and grief in my experience, I'm really adding something authentic to the resonance of the experience here. I'm really impacting the experience in a real and irreversible way, right? Without interference. So the thing about realizing the organic part of the journey and that we receive what we require can enable us to start relaxing about this. Like this panic to get it done and that I'm behind. I should be further than I am on, what I've done up to now, it wasn't really. Everything that has brought us to this moment is required. It's absolutely required. And everything we require to continue is being brought to us. And really our choice is, do I respond to it or do I react to it? So, there is a saying, I shall come as a thief in the night, right? And it's a great saying, I'll come as a thief in the night. And so we say, what does it mean? This energy, this, which in Christianity may call it Christ consciousness or whatever this energy is going to come as a thief in the night. What the hell is that about, right? Does it mean like at 4 o'clock in the morning, Jesus is going to come stamping into my house in his white like aura and everything and wake me up, right? No. But actually that metaphor is beautiful because if you think about a thief in the night, you're asleep and you hear the sound of breaking glass. Like you wake up to the sound of breaking glass somewhere in your house. That's going to get your attention, right? It's going to wake you. You're going to wake up and be out of bed in 2 seconds, right? It's going to really awaken us up out of the illusion that we're in, or the state of hypnosis. So whatever it is that comes, whatever the crisis is the Christ. Okay? And in that saying in the Gospel of Thomas, I do not come to bring peace to this world. Think about that. I don't come to bring peace to this world. In other words, I'm not going to come here and let you live happily in your illusions. That's not my job, is to come and make you happy about the type of way that you're living in a complete illusion. That's not my job. Is to bring fire, sword, and war. Fire, sword. I come with fire, sword, and war. Right? I am the crisis. Right? And not only that, I come to cleave father from son. I'm coming to destroy your families. Think about that. Right? Contemplate that. That's the energy. Right? One of the closest words we have to Christ is crisis. The Christ is the crisis. And the problem is we've been so indoctrinated by religious perspective and especially New Age spirituality that we're looking for the warm, fluffy, glowing thing to arrive, right? That's going to save us from ourselves. But actually, it's not like that at all. It's not like that at all. It's when the upset comes in, right? The upset, whenever we get upset, when something happens that shatters our experience, that is it. That's the moment. That's the emergency, right? And either we go deeper asleep or we emerge and see, right? So in each of us, every day, we are being given opportunities The crisis visits us all, and it's tailored to us. A crisis that is, for example, going to impact you will not necessarily have any effect on me. Why? Because the crisis is designed to trigger an awareness of something that is already going on with you, right? To trigger an awareness of something within you that is imprinted, that is unresolved. And that's why it affects you, and it's tailored for you. Each upset is tailored so beautifully for the individual it's delivered to. On a golden platter, right? A golden tray. Here's your opportunity to go from doing to being. Right? So I made it specially for you. Like, I want that! No, it shouldn't be that way. It's supposed to be another way. Right? So let's look at that. Because in identifying the upset, we identify the doorway into the kingdom. Right? The doorway out of the boredom, through the doldrum, and into the kingdom. So let's look at the mechanics of upset, because it's important to bring awareness to the mechanics of being upset, because the mechanics of becoming upset are the same for everybody. We all interact with it robotically, right? So for this particular illustration, I'm going to have you assist us, right? Yeah, and you're going to be my boss, right? So we'll just take it like in the workplace, because actually you don't have to go to the ashram, you don't have to go to the retreat, you don't have to go to India, you don't even have to come into the temple. Just hang out where you are. Wherever you go, there you are. It will be placed at your feet, right? That's how abundant and loving the universe is, right? I will bring it to you, express mail. I won't even charge you for the delivery. Okay. So I go to work every day. I'm always late. I'm always at least 15 minutes late to work. No matter if I leave early, I'm always late. And the reason I'm late, it's the traffic. It's because my wife didn't do this. It's because it's never got anything to do with me, but I'm always late. And I'm always in a state of anxiety when I get to work, because I know I'm going to be late. I'm late, right? And so I get to work and I'm in a state of anxiety, and I walk past my boss's door and I look in, and he's there and he looks at me and he goes, right? And in that moment, I experience a transformation in my consciousness, right? It's called getting upset. In that moment, something happens. And from that moment, my behavior is so predictable, it's robotic, right? Because what's happening is I'm being driven by a charge. I don't know that because I no longer have emotional body awareness, which means I'm not aware of what's going on in my emotional body. But in my emotional body, there's a deep state of anxiety related to authority figures, which was imprinted in me as a child through my relationship with my father. Whenever there's an authority figure around, an awareness of this emotional signature surfaces, right? And this charge drives my behavior. I'm not even aware of it, right? So that is the physical circumstance of the mirror, right? And the physical circumstance is going to trigger my awareness. It's used as a mirror. It's going to trigger my awareness of this emotional charge. Because I'm coming to work, this emotional charge is coming to the surface. Because I'm entering an experience that mirrors it. So it's going to come to the surface, and as I see you, it's going to be the trigger point, right? But I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware that I'm having a powerful emotional experience here, although I am, because I get angry, but you're the responsible for the anger. It's got nothing to do with me, right? You're making me angry, right? But the emotional signature comes up, and immediately what I do is, it's so uncomfortable, I want to stop it. I want to feel better, and I will do whatever it takes to feel better. I don't want to get better at feeling, I just want to feel better, right? And so what I do is I immediately start to sedate and control it. I immediately go into the story. That's the first step away from the emotional signature, is to go into the story. And I walk into my office and I start saying, you know what, I don't deserve this. I'm sick of this. Okay, so I'm late 15 minutes every day? Yeah, so big deal, right? I do my work. I work really hard. I do overtime to make up for it. In fact, I work like an hour overtime because I'm so guilty for being 15 minutes late. And yet I still get treated this way. I don't deserve this, right? And so what happens is I'm now hypnotizing myself with a story that I absolutely believe to be true. And the more I tell the story, the more my world reflects to me that it's true, right? So now I can take that story to its ultimate. In other words, I can go from the mental and then into the physical behavior that comes out of the story. And the physical behavior will look like this, right? I've had enough of working for you. Here's my resignation. You can stick this job, right? That's it. One for the workers. Now I feel better. I showed him. No one pushes me around, right? And then that evening I go to the bar. I'm buying drinks for my friends. I'm the man. I showed him. And I'm saying how I showed him, and everyone's going, yeah, one for the workers, right? And then eventually, at some point, I'm not buying drinks anymore because I've got to watch my cash. And someone will eventually have the courage to ask the question, well, so what are you going to do now? Right? And that question will start awakening me from the hypnosis that I'm in. And by the morning, I will wake up in the morning and I will say to myself, what the hell happened? Who was that maniac who went and destroyed my life? Like I was possessed by something. I now don't have a job, I don't have an income, and he's not going to give me a good reference, you can be sure of that. I messed everything up. Who was that person? Right? And we've all had that experience, especially the best place to have it is on email, right? Someone sends you an email that just totally triggers you, right? And you get the email and you read it, go, oh, forget this, send. Oh, hell no, I want to, no, get it back, I want to get it, no, I have to deal with that stuff, right? Because what is not visible to us, what we don't realize is that as I move past my boss's office and he looks at me and he goes like that to me and triggers me, right? I'm actually entering an altered state of consciousness. I'm entering an altered state of consciousness. And in that altered state of consciousness, I behave like a mad person, right? What's happening is I'm entering an illusion. If I look at you and I see my Father, you have disappeared. You're no longer there. I cannot see you. Now, if I start behaving around you the way I behaved around my Father, I'm in a deluded state, right? I'm in a state of delusion. And in that state, my behavior is very predictable. There's another, for example, if I don't take it to its ultimate physical outcome of resigning, I may just stay in the mental with it, right? After telling my story, I'm not going to be treated like this, and I don't deserve this, and, well, I'm going to do something about it, right? We need to have a talk. If anybody comes to you and says, we need to have a talk, be sure you are dealing with someone in a state of deep delusion. Because what we need to have a talk means is this: I'm right and you're wrong. Let's start right there. And I'm going to be here in your face as long as it takes for you to admit that. And I'm going to manipulate you until you agree with me. And if you agree with me, we can have peace. If you don't, we've got a problem. Right? And what's happening is, what's really unfolding is that I'm attempting to sedate and control the discomfort in my emotional body related to this trigger point, related to this emotional imprinting, by either mentally or physically manipulating my experience. And it doesn't matter if I use both of those, because I will always end up in the same place. Nothing will have changed, right? If we have the talk, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get to work on time and not be 15 minutes late. In fact, I'm going to get to work 15 minutes late anyway and still be in a state of anxiety whenever I see you. Because there's a difference between release and resolution. Most of us that have entered emotional work have been involved in emotional release, right? Emotional release looks like this. This over here is a pillow. This is my dad. This here is a stick. This is how I feel about my dad. Why, I hate you! How dare you, right? And I scream and shout and express myself. We've all gone to those things, done some of that work. And afterwards I feel much better. Oh, do I feel better? And because I've let out some steam and pressure, I actually have a sense of a bit of clarity about things, and things are clearer for a while. But actually, that trigger point has not been resolved. It will resurface in my life. I can leave this job and go and get another job. And I may start on really good behavior at that job, but soon or later I will project my father upon the authority figure and be behaving exactly the same way I was behaving at the previous job. So nothing has changed. I've altered my physical world. I may even alter the way I think about things, but actually at some point nothing has changed. And it's that's what being a ghost is, right? We have the ghost, the metaphor of the ghost, the one of the girl who she's going to see she has to get to her parents, or she has to get to her lover, and she's hiking in the middle of the night on a freeway trying to get to her lover, and she gets hit by a passing car, right? And now if you go on that freeway at 10 past 12 on a certain night, you will see her still hiking, still trying to get to her lover. And you can pick her up and give her a lift, and you look in your rearview mirror and, oh, she's disappeared, because she's just a ghost, right? And she is still hiking. She's still stuck in that place, right? She's still stuck in that place. And it's the same way we do when we live in revolutionary or reactive behavior. We are exactly ghosts. It's like every time I try and change this circumstance by making a mental or physical adjustment, I am behaving like a ghost, because I'm repeating a behavior over and over that takes me nowhere, right? Takes me nowhere. What's required is for someone to come and say, wake up, you're dead, come into the light, right? To raise ourselves from the dead, right? And raising ourselves from the dead is about dying to this particular scenario. I have to die to this. I actually have to go through a death experience. And in order to accomplish that, that's what alchemy is about. Alchemy leads me into the death so that I can die to this energetic imprint, the impact it's having, right? So let's say I have a friend who's done something like the presence process or emotional work and brings to my awareness that what's happening to me is a memory, a reoccurrence of a memory. Because I can't see that until it's brought to my awareness, because the memory is not the physical. Although physically, because you're an authority figure, there is some sort of archetype or metaphor here that is common. All authority figures do something, make me feel a certain way, right? And then, so physically you may reflect something about my father, who was an authority figure. Mentally, the story I tell myself about what's going on may have a theme to it. Maybe a story I've been telling since I was a teenager about my relationship with my father. When I turned that childhood experience of my father into the mental stuff, I would have developed stories around it. And I've been telling that story my whole life, just different forms of it. So there's a theme in the story. But what the memory truly is when I get triggered, as I walk past the door and you go like that, right, to me, and the feeling that comes up in my being, that's the memory. The memory is encountered purely through felt perception. It doesn't have a concept around it, nor a physical circumstance. But it has those things because that's how they're reflected upon it. But the memory itself is as a emotional signature, an emotional signature that my father carried and passed it to me through the behavior, the interaction I had with him when I was a child. That's how it was passed on to me. But his father had that emotional signature too. And so did his father. And each of those individuals had their own stories and physical circumstances that gave that emotional signature expression in the world. All of those stories and circumstances are different in many ways. They're all unique to that individual's experience. But the emotional signature is the same. The emotional signature is the truth. Right? So getting to the truth is what sets us free. So let's say this is brought to my awareness, right? That I'm being triggered, that this is just a messenger, right? This is a mirror. Another word for messenger is mess ender. Someone who's going to assist me to end some internal mess, right? A messenger, and the message is, I'm really angry. I'm not angry at you, I'm angry. It's showing me, no one can make us angry if we don't have anger in us. It's not possible. It's just not going to be there. We'd just burst out laughing if they try, right? So the message is, I am angry. The actual causal point is this feeling underlying the anger, right? So I become aware of that, but it doesn't change anything. Getting that mentally and intellectually doesn't change anything. Because actually only what changes it is the work of alchemy upon that causal point. So yeah, I do the presence process. I go through the first 6 weeks. In the first 6 weeks, this is brought to my attention, right? I come to work. I walk past the door, I'm late. I get this look, right? I get triggered. I get upset, right? And in the midst of it, I suddenly realize what's going on. Wow, that was a setup, right? I still feel the anger, but now I'm not going to engage in a means to physically manipulate him so that I feel better, or physically manipulate my circumstances. But I will have gone into the story, right? I may also catch myself in mid-reaction. So I'm really upset. I go to the office. Okay, no, I've had enough of this business right now. You know what? We can talk about this later. It's not really important right now. I've got some things I need to do. Yeah, catch you later, right? And what happens is I catch myself in mid-reaction. And in mid-reaction, I realize, hang on, I'm being set up here. I'm starting to behave like an idiot, right? So eventually what will happen is I'll get to a point where I know it's coming. I'm coming to work. I'm late. I'm going to walk past the door. He's going to look at me a certain way. I'm going to get really angry, and I already know this before I leave home. Right? And still it happens, and still I get triggered, but now I'm in awareness of it. I'm not sedating and controlling this feeling. I'm going to, as best as I can, not to entertain the story about it, because the mental body will go, it's because of this. No, it'll tell its story. I'm just not going to entertain it, right? But now I'm going to sit in the charge. I may go through the whole day at work feeling quite uncomfortable, right? There's an energy around my body. There's a nausea in my solar plexus. It's difficult for me to concentrate and focus because what's coming up, the whole world around me looks angry, but I'm aware that this is mine. This is my emotional signature. I'm looking at the world through the lens of my emotional signature. That's what happens whenever we become upset. When we become upset, the lens of our emotional body, a picture comes over, and we look at the world through that picture. And if it's a picture of fear, we see a fearful world. If it's a picture of anger, we see an angry world, right? So I go through work with this feeling, and by the end of the day, the feeling has subsided, right? I go home, and I take care of my responsibilities, and then I have a little bit of open time. And so now I choose, right? Let me be with this. Let me approach this. Let's do some alchemy here. And alchemy is, the first thing I do is I'm going to bring this back into my awareness. So I can use the physical and the mental to do that. I can recall the physical circumstances. I can tell myself the story. Well, I'm coming to work late as usual, right? And I walk past my boss's door, and he looks at me in that disapproving manner, right? And I can't stand it when people look at me like that. And I start telling the story, and suddenly the feeling is there, the emotional signature. Now I no longer require the story. Now the only use for my mental body is to use it as a point of attention, to navigate its attention to where that feeling is. It's going to be in my being somewhere. If it's anger, it's most probably around here, a sense of nausea. I might feel a buzzing in my hands. Wherever I feel it in my being and my body is valid. And what I then do is I place my attention upon it, and I be with it without condition. I just cradle it. and allow myself to be with it. Now, initially what we may find is that when I place my attention on the anger, it's there for a moment and then it's gone. And I go, wow, that was easy. Got that one right. Remember that our relationship with our emotional body is that whenever anything comes up, we sedate and control it. We push it out of our awareness. We're addicted to doing that. So initially, it's like a child. Whenever a child is upset, we tell it to go away. So eventually, when we come around, if the child's upset, it automatically goes away. It's the same with our energetic circumstance, right? I put my attention on my anger, it goes away. I've been doing that all my life. I have to show it. I have to show that child that I'm not going to try and change its experience, that I accept its experience as valid. It can be there in the same space as I am, and I won't interfere with it. I won't go into fear. That's what interference is. When I interfere, I enter fear, right? I'm not going to interfere with my anger. I'm just going to be with it. And for the first few times that I'm with it, it may disappear, and I may tell the story, it may come back, and so I just allow that to happen. But eventually, it may remain. And it may remain, say in my experience, it's here, I feel it here. So I just sit with it and I'm being with it. And what will happen is it will start to build. The experience of it will start to build. Because a good analogy for alchemy is a pressure cooker. A pressure cooker will not cook food until it gets to a certain pressure. Right? What we do, whenever we get upset, we're removing the lid. Whenever I tell the story about what's happening, I'm taking the lid off the pot. Whenever I do something about it physically to try and change it, I'm taking the lid off the pot. And when I take the lid off the pot, I feel better, right? Because the pressure has gone down. Of course I feel better. But then eventually life circumstances are such, the lid goes back on the pot, it starts to build up again. And I start to see it reflected around me in my thoughts, and I start to feel very uncomfortable again, and I find a way to take the lid off the pot. Alchemy is, I'm not going to do release work. Right? I'm not going to beat the pillow. I'm not going to sit and talk it out with somebody. I'm not going to do the release work anymore. Now I'm going to develop the capacity to contain the experience, because I require the pressure. I require the pressure to cook the meal so I can digest the experience. Right? So sitting with the anger, it may begin to build. Whatever the experience is for the person being with their emotional condition is valid. It's different for everybody. Say in my experience, I feel it build, and often what happens to me is it kind of seems to move up here, and when it gets here, I burp. I don't know why, but that's the way it is for me. I burp. Oh yeah, right. Or sometimes it'll get to a point and I'll burst into tears. I don't even know what I'm crying about. I have no point of reference for the tears. I just burst into tears and I sob, and then the sobbing is gone. It's almost like vomiting out grief. For me, it's like vomiting grief. I'm throwing up something, right? And then it completes itself, and then there's a state of peace afterwards. So it builds up, it peaks, but as it's peaking, it gets to a point where it's unbearable. And it's at that point that I can actually lose consciousness and suddenly find myself at the fridge eating food. How did I get here? I was sitting over there with my anger, and now I'm here at the fridge eating food, right? I'm suddenly in the garden watering plants, or I'm suddenly, I escape it, right? So sitting with that feeling, because that feeling, we are now facing the very thing that I've been running away from all my life. But also on a deeper level, what's happening is we're undergoing a death experience. We are really, a part of us is dying. When I was a child, because I could never be good enough for my father, because he was never good enough for himself, right? So I was never good enough in his eyes. I created a persona, I created a personality to deal with that. Someone who tries really hard, someone who's full of anxiety about authority figures. I created a personality to try and please you and keep myself safe, right? I created this personality, this inauthentic personality. And what happens is, once I go to the emotional signature that gave rise to that expression, and I integrate it, that expression is going to die. That person is literally going to die, right? And I'm going to feel that death. I'm going to feel that death. And as I go through that death experience, we know we are entering the death experience, because the mental body will start saying, this isn't working. We have to stop, right? There's something else we could be doing. There's no hope. There's no hope. Actually, I don't want to live. There's no hope anymore, right? I'd rather die, right? There is no God. There's no, right? There's no hope. It's all dark, right? And that's the mental body telling you that you're entering the death experience. And if you don't entertain the mental body and you just stay, it will peak and become unbearable, and then there'll be an opening. However that opening may be with tears, it may just be an energetic opening. You may feel you go to extreme heat and suddenly, that heat is gone. Whatever it is, you will be delivered from that place into a place of peace. Right? And so afterwards, you'll know when you've achieved resolution, because there'll be a state of peace afterwards. But how you'll really know is that if I place my attention on you, on my boss at work, right? If I look at him, in my mind's eye, there'll be no anger. There'll be no blame. There'll be simply gratitude. I will realize that that wasn't real. Right? I've carried that with me all my life. I've placed it on every authority figure. What happens when I reach that state of peace or resolution, I will then receive insight. Right? And the mechanics of insight are this. That load of anger that I've been suppressing from my awareness is an aspect of my feeling body that has been shut down because I don't want to feel that, right? So I shut that part of my feeling body down. As I allow myself to feel this anger and it comes up, I awaken that aspect of my feeling body and it unfolds like a flower, right? If a flower had a mental body, it would be going, ouch, ouch, wow, ouch, ouch. How long is this going to take, right? It's an unfolding, right? And once that part of myself has unfolded, it's like having the insight awakens. I can see things about my experience I couldn't see before through felt perception. The mental body leads us to believe we must understand in order to heal. You must come and sit on my couch and let's talk about this till you understand that and then you will heal, right? That's the mental body's idea about things. But actually, understanding doesn't heal. If we try and stay in understanding, we never enter the actual emotional signature. The concrete is the physical world. The diving board is the mental world. The water is the emotional signature. At some point, we've got to get off the diving board into the water, right? So what happens is the understanding is not required for the healing, but when the healing really takes place, when there's resolution, the insight comes afterwards. If it's required, I'll be able to see how this energetic circumstance has followed me all my life and the causal point of it as a child, and I'll be able to see it mirrored in my parents and in my brothers and sisters. I'll be able to see, wow, right? Not completely from a point of awareness, because it's now gone. I can look at it in hindsight, right? I will also know, because when I come to work the next day, I'll find my boss sleeping. I will know, because if I come to work the next day, right, there will be something different. Because this work is about intimacy. Into me and see. Into me and see. Intimacy, right? The more I am with my fear, anger, and grief, with my emotional signature, the more I awaken insight into myself. The more I am entering a very intimate relationship with who and what I am, right? So, because I'm more intimate with myself, I'm going to be more intimate with you. And because I have authentically cleared the emotional signature that you were mirroring for me, this blockage between us is no longer there, right? It's not there. And so as I walk past the office, you may look at me like, right? But it won't trigger me. It won't show up on my barometer as fear, anger, or grief. It won't, right? In fact, I'll actually feel more drawn to you because there'll have been an opening here. So I may kind of stop at the door and go, hey, how's it going? Right? And you'll kind of be, But also you'll be more open to me because I'm more open to you. That's how the mirror works. So we may start chatting a bit. How was your weekend? I've been going through some stuff, but it's coming right. And you'll say, yeah, I've been going through some stuff too. I feel a bit embarrassed about this, but somehow I feel I can tell you about this, but I've been really constipated, right? I can't, right? And I will realize that the expression on your face had nothing to do with me at all. That's the story. The story is never, never true. It doesn't mean you weren't making a funny face. It means that the story I tell myself, when it's related to being upset, is never, never true. Never. There is never one circumstance I have found in my life when I've resolved an emotional imprint brought up by an upsetting circumstance. I have never found the story that I told myself within that upsetting circumstance to be true. Never once. Never once. Right? So I may say to you, well, I've had a bit of an anger problem. And I find that I couldn't stop hating. When you can't stop hating, constipating. Anger is such a powerful energy. It has so much heat to it that it dries out the stomach lining. We can't have a decent bowel movement. When we're full of rage, it's very difficult to have a decent constipating. So these sorts of things, if the nature of alchemy is this, alchemy impacts my way of relating with you. It impacts my experience with you in an irreversible way. It transforms it without me talking to you or doing anything to you. That's what alchemy is, right? That's the power of being, of the resonance of being without condition. It knows no order of difficulty. In this Course in Miracles thing, I don't know if any of you have looked at it, where it has this term, no order of difficulty. Course in Miracles is very mental stuff. It's about attunement of the mental body. We do Course in Miracles before we do emotional work. Once you do emotional work, Course in Miracles is like a lead weight around your leg because there's so much, explaining and stuff, right? But in there it speaks about no order of difficulty. And we assume when we're in the state of want that no order of difficulty means there is no difficulty in getting what I want. If I apply this work, I'm going to get everything I want because there's no order of difficulty. Actually, no order of difficulty is, there is no order of difficulty in bringing about resolution when I go to the causal point of the experience and be there without condition. There is no order of difficulty in bringing about a resolution. Not in getting what I want, but there is no order of difficulty in receiving what I require to accomplish resolution. Right? That's what no order of difficulty really is getting at. So that's the first step of the journey of intimacy. When I go through my daily experience and pay attention to the encounters in which there is a crisis surfacing. Any crisis in my life is this opportunity. An opportunity to go and make an impact to my experience at the causal point. Right? It's a mirroring in the world of an emotional imprint that is asking to be brought to resolution. And that's the first level of the work. I have to engage that level of the work over and over and over so that I can see experientially that the condition of my emotional body is the causal point of the quality of the experience I'm having. The condition of my emotional body is the causal point of the quality of the experience I'm having. And if I want to impact the quality of my experience, that it's very important that I become aware of the authentic condition of my emotional body and start to integrate that, right? Once I realize that, I'm less going to be likely to fiddle with people around me or to engage in trying to understand what's happening to me to try and fix it, or to rearrange the world around me to try and accomplish that. And once I get to that level of the work where I see that to be true, it's not about understanding, it's about seeing it as an experience. Once I have faith in that level of the work, I have faith in being without condition on that level, then I can move to a different level of the work, right? But first, it's probably good to have some tea and cookies. So let's take a little break. So one of the challenging things about emotional processing is it takes us from integration to disintegration. And it's that thing, that expression that I like, I don't mind doing transformational work as long as nothing changes. Or, I don't mind changing as long as everything stays the same. Right? Because we don't mind entering the idea about emotional work and transformational work, but we really don't want anything to change. Right? Because the mental body is addicted to familiarity. Also, the mental body worships the structures it has built out of the emotional signature. It absolutely worships them. Right? It worships marriage. It believes marriage is so necessary. It created marriage out of the emotional signature. It worships the family unit. It worships it. Right? It worships all sorts of things. It worships see, it's all about dismantling. So first of all, I made the person out of my emotional signature. I made someone to interact with the world, through which to interact with the world. Somebody who gets the attention that I need and who keeps me safe. I made someone. I made it up. And not only did I make that person up, but not only does that person have a relationship with all of you, but I have a relationship with that person. Right? So I'm in a relationship. I'm always talking to this person. Oh, you're never going to get anywhere. Oh, you're never good enough. Or, yeah, you'll mess up again. Or, well, I'm always in a conversation with this person that I made up. Right? So the first part of the journey, like what we were speaking about now, this working with these experiences, this is about breaking up with yourself. Look, Michael, it's time. I've got to break up with you. We just can't go out anymore. We can't go out. We've got to go in. Okay. So the first step is dismantling that persona that was manufactured. Then, and as we dismantle that, there's all sorts of things that unfold. One of them is that we find ourselves with less people around. So it's going to go hand in hand also with the dismantling of the group. Because the identity of this person that made up, that person would have identified with a particular group, right? And that group will serve it. So as I dismantle that persona, I'm also going to dismantle the relationship I have with that group. They're very difficult. Very difficult. It's like climbing out of a box, right? There's a great saying, think outside the box. But what if thinking is the box? Right? What if, for a Christian, the box is Christianity? What if, for a Jew, the box is Judaism? What if, for a Muslim, the box is Islam? How much out of the box do we want to climb? Right? Because to be sure, when we start dismantling these emotional signatures internally, the structures we have built out of the fear, anger, and grief are going to be dismantled. And one of the side effects is being alone. Right? We find ourselves with less people around. Right? And this is a rite of passage. A rite of passage. The needing the group and the person that I've created to interact with the world, that is actually one great metaphor on that relationship is the metaphor of the vampire. Right? The vampire is such a beautiful metaphor. The vampire, how do you become a vampire? You get bitten on the neck by a vampire. They bite in and they suck blood, and the moment they do that to you, then you have become a vampire. And when you become a vampire, you can't enter the light. The light will destroy you. Right? And being a vampire, the only way to kill a vampire is to put a stake in the heart. Right? The heart is at stake. Right? So the being bitten by a vampire is the emotional body imprinting of the child. The behavior around the child turns the child into a vampire. Because what the behavior says is what I need, I get from you. What I need, I get from you. What I need, I get from the world, right? I get from the world. And it looks like this. I mean, a vampire behavior looks like this. I've had such a hard day. Really, everything went wrong today. I was stuck in the traffic. Really, people were nasty with me at work. I've just had a really, really hard day. And now that I've finished telling you about that, I feel better. How do you feel? You feel lousy, right? Because I've just gone... I believe that telling you about that is going to change my circumstances. I believe that bringing you into my drama is going to help me escape from my drama. And most of our behavior of drama is about vampirism, right? Some people will even go to hospital with a terminal disease because it's the only way they can get any attention. We can do terrible things to get attention, right? Because the belief is that I cannot give this to myself. I don't even know I'm capable of giving this to myself. I believe I have to get it from someone else. And what I'm getting is something that I should be giving myself. All drama is an attempt to get from others what I have the capacity to actually give myself. It's just that I haven't developed the capacity yet to do so. So I go to others. And my relationships with people in the world are based in what I can get. My group is a place where I can get something that I can't give myself. And you can tell that when you say to a person, well, this means the end of the group, right? And some people will go, no, but I can't leave my group. Oh, no, I need my group. We have to do this in group work. And then that person still requires getting the blood from the group. Right? Instead of getting the blood from my own heart, I'm getting my blood from somebody else. Right? And so what kills a vampire? What kills a vampire? If you take a stake and put it in the heart. If I take a stake and I ram it into your heart, you can be sure of one thing. All your attention will go to the heart. When we place our attention into the heart, and that's a metaphor for into the emotional body. When I actually become aware of the authentic condition of my emotional body, I will realize how this is driving my behavior, creating my dramas. And in taking care of that, in integrating those emotional conditions, I'm going to develop the emotional capacity to give to myself what I've been giving to others. Right? And the light is that I actually can receive it all from myself. I don't actually need to get it from others. The neediness is not the basis of our relationship as humans. Right? That's the vampire relationship. And so what happens as I start to value my drama less, because we're either into the drama or the dharma. Right? It's the drama or the dharma. Right? The drama was me coming to work and getting upset by my boss and resigning and having the talk. That's all the drama. The dharma it was an emotional signature related to my childhood, etc., which has caused me to be insecure around authority figures. That's the dharma. I received the dharma out of that. That's the wisdom of the experience, right? And going through the dharma enables me to grow up. Become the author, instead of having an authority figure, to become the author of my own experience. So as I go through that, as I value drama less, the people around me who value drama as a means of communication will tend to start moving away, right? It's another thing too is when we start to engage in alchemy, we become processors. We don't even realize we're doing this. And what an alchemist does is, if an alchemist walks into your space, you will look at them and mirrored in them you will see your stuff. It'll bring up an awareness of your stuff. You don't even know you're not even aware that that's happening, right? And if you're ready to look at your stuff, it'll be a valuable experience. If you're not, you will move away, right? So people, you don't have to say, okay, I want more time with myself. I need some alone time. So I'm going to pick up the people that no longer serve me and phone them and tell them to go away, right? You don't have to do that. All we have to do is process, and they'll leave. Just process. You don't have to clean dust off an airplane. Just take off. Right? Just take off. So as we start doing emotional processing work, we start increasing our vibration, or our vibration starts increasing. As we resolve those lower vibrations, we literally do start taking off. And people come around us, there's going to be an interaction. Either they're going to become aware of their low vibrations as they try to match us vibrationally, and if they're prepared to do that, they may hang around. If they're not, they will move away. And so what happens is there'll be less people around. And we enter an experience called being alone or loneliness. Loneliness in alchemy is a rite of passage, because it's really important that I start to have a feeling for myself. We're so enmeshed in the energies of other people. We grow up amidst this family. We go to school with all these people. As soon as possible, we get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And then as soon as we can get that together, we dive into bed with someone and sleep next to them for as long as possible. As long as that'll work out, right? And so we're continually immersing ourselves in someone's energy field. And we don't get a sense of our own energy field. It's very important to get a sense of my own way of being with myself. Because the way that I am being with myself is the causal point of all the relationship I'm having in the world. What's very hard for us to see is that there are different levels of interaction, relationship, relating to going on simultaneously, right? If I'm a very physically transfixed being, then the world looks like this to me. Those people over there, they're always gossiping, Have you noticed they always talk about other people? Don't they have anything to do but stand around all day and point and talk about other people? And they're probably talking about me. I wish they wouldn't talk about me, right? So that's a very physically transfixed being. A very physically transfixed being perceives the world as the way we behave, as the way people behave towards each other and towards them. That's the way we perceive. I watch how people behave towards each other and towards me. And if it triggers any awareness that I don't like, I will try and change that some way, physically, right? The next level of awareness gets to more the mental level of awareness, getting to the mental clarity. And that looks like this. Oh, well, I don't like the fact that they're gossiping, because actually that's what I'm doing right now. And I actually would rather that they wouldn't show me what I'm doing so clearly, right? So I realize that actually what annoys me about other people's behavior is what I'm doing. Right? That's the only reason it's gnawing at me. Gnawing at me. So that level of awareness is really about how I'm behaving towards others. Right? And then underlying that is a deeper level of relating to, in which I get to more the emotional aspect of my experience, in which I see the way I'm relating towards myself. For example, I suddenly realize, hang on a moment, I'm gossiping to myself about myself all day. Right? Like, Michael, you're just never going to, when are you going to get this together? You're just never going to blah, 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 right? That level, I don't even see that level. That's a much deeper level. And underlying that is a feeling. It's an emotional signature. And that emotional signature is driving that way that I relate to myself. The stories that I tell myself about myself are actually mental reflections, mental emanations of that deeply uncomfortable emotional imprint. And then the way that I relate to myself is the way that I relate to you. And the way that I relate to you is the way I see people relating to each other and towards me. It's an outgoing radiance. So I can try and change the way people behave towards each other in the world, form a peace organization, go, guys, make peace. I hate myself, but I want you to make peace. Right? Or I can go and try and, I'll be really nice and polite to you, but I'm calling myself an arsehole internally. Right? The only place that I can make a change that is going to impact all those levels of relating to is when I go to that emotional signature. When I adjust that emotional signature internally, I resolve that inner felt discomfort. That way of being with myself or doing to myself will immediately dismantle. Those behaviors that have emanated towards others out of that will dismantle. And the way people behave towards each other and towards me, I won't even pay attention to those types of behavior. They won't be reflecting or triggering for me. I won't even notice them. And you'll notice that if you're with a group of people, how some people will notice something somebody does and no one else does. Like, oh, I wish that person wouldn't do that over there. Like, just chill out, we're having lunch. No, but I wish that person wouldn't do that. I wish you'd just get off your cell phone, right? And you'll find the person who says, I wish you'd just get off the cell phone, and 5 minutes later they're on the cell phone, right? So it's about going to that causal point. And as I go to that place, people are going to clear out of my space. And the analogy that I like is the one of climbing a mountain, right? Is of the Himalayas, right? Some people are perfectly satisfied with the coffee table book of the Himalayas on their coffee table. In fact, most people are, right? That's cool. You come to visit and they go, you want to see the Himalayas? Come check this, right? Look through the coffee table book. Yeah, it's great. Wow, wonderful. Oh, let's have some coffee and tea, right? Some people have a photograph of the Himalayas taken by a friend of theirs who went to India. And it's on their fridge. And you're in the kitchen, they go, hang on, have you seen the Himalayas? Look, I've got a photo from Frank, right, of the Himalayas. Look, oh, amazing. Oh, that's cool, right? Some people will go to India, to 60 miles away from the Himalayas and go, wow, that's awesome, that's the Himalayas. Check. Okay, let's go home, right? Less of those people. Some people will go right to the base of the Himalayas and look up and, wow, what a beautiful mountain. Glad I don't have to climb that. Now, let's send the photo home to George, right? Some people will go up to base camp about a mile up and camp there and hang out. We're on the Himalayas. This is great. Be there for a day like, I really could do with a drink or something. Let's go down to the bar down there, right? Others will want to go to the top, right? And the more you go towards the summit, the less people there are, right? There are many, many people with coffee table books. There are far less people on the base camp. And there really are very few people hiking up, right? And if you want to look at it just in context, right? Like, if we were here this evening, for example, if this was an evening, tonight is a good night, Friday, right? If we were here in the evening, let's say, in this country, how many people would be at sporting events? Millions. How many people at political rallies? Because of this time of year, hundreds of thousands maybe, right? Maybe a few million. How many people concerned with emotional body processing? There'll be places in the country where their people are, but you can count them, and maybe in the hundreds. And that's a reality check about how many people want to summit. How many people actually want to take responsibility for their experience, right? So the idea of converting everyone to responsibility is ridiculous. Not everybody wants to climb to the top of the Himalayas. Only crazy people would want to do such a thing, right? Rather just sit down and watch a game of football, right? So the thing about it, and even as you climb up the Himalayas, you may even have a guide for a while, just you and your guide, right? But if you have an authentic guide, at some point the guide will even say, this is as far as I'm going. You need to go ahead, because you have to summit on your own for it to be valid, right? And so that part of the journey of walking alone is a very important part of the journey. There used to be a time when we were more in touch with our indigenous selves, we were more in touch with the natural world and the natural cycles of things, where we would incorporate that experience into our life. And the elders would come along when we were finishing our 3 7-year cycles, and we were around 19, 20, 21 years old, the elders would come along and take us away from the community, right, and place us in isolation, and draw a circle around us and say, I'll see you in 5 days, right? You stay there. And we would stay on our own and just be with ourselves and get a sense of what it's like to be with ourselves. What does that feel like? It's really important that we get a sense of what it really feels like to be with ourselves. Because the feeling capacity is the point of communication to what we really are. The feeling capacity is the point of communication to what God really is. The mental body would have us believe, no, it's the understanding capacity. No. We cannot understand what we are. We cannot understand, these things are beyond understanding, but we can get a feel for it. So, developing the feeling capacity requires being in my own space. And it comes to all of us that do this work that things empty out, right? And we tend to fight it. But it's really an important part, because that's when I'm going to develop the capacity, the emotional body muscle, to comfort myself. When I'm in a state of fear, there's no one to run to. Can I be with myself and comfort myself? When I'm angry, can I still be with myself when I'm angry? Or do I judge and detest myself and blame myself? And can I really be with myself in a gentle way in the midst of deep anger? Can I comfort myself when I'm grieving? Right? The thing about this work is it's about discovery. The thing about group work is it's about recovery. And there's a big difference. So if I'm having a moment of being with my grief, and I'm in the midst of my grief, and I'm crying, and someone walks in the room who's completely unaware of emotional work, they will attempt to try and cover up what's happening. It's called recovery, all right? I want to cover up what's happening with you because I don't really want to have to look at that in myself. So whatever I can do to make you feel better, just let me know. I'll do that, right? And often, mostly what the group will do is help us to feel better in some way, right? Getting better at feeling is work that has to be done with ourselves, right, on our own. And so we go through this first step of the journey, the first step of the intimacy, of being upset in the world and going and being with that, and seeing what alchemy is about, making a change at the causal point by bringing being without condition to that emotional signature. And once we see we're able to accomplish that, right, that we can work with that, then we can go to the next level, right? And the next level is contained in the expression, if you think you're enlightened, go home for Thanksgiving. Right? Because most of our spiritual and metaphysical and New Age stuff excludes our family, right? And in fact, it's like, can't be with them, we've got to go and be with the ashram people because the family just, don't just, right? But actually, the family is the greatest ashram we could enter. There is no holier temple of transformation than the family dinner table, right? And it's designed that way. It's deliberately designed that way, right? So, if you are here and listening to this, and it actually makes you can somehow comprehend what it is I'm talking about, because the reality is there are many people on this planet who couldn't have sat through as much as you've sat through. They'd go like, that's enough of this, right? Oh, I'm going to watch a game of football, right? Or can't even understand it. It doesn't make any sense, right? There's no point of reference. Because only certain beings on this planet are alchemists. Not everyone is an alchemist. And the desire is, once I discover alchemy, I want everyone to be an alchemist, right? I discover it, so I buy 10 copies of the Presence Process, I give it to every member of my family and say, okay, now let's do the work, right? The family go, what the hell are you doing? You know, are you mad, right? So it's our desire, because we want to help out, right? But actually an alchemist, you can tell an alchemist is born into a family situation. And what an alchemist is, they're born with a heightened state of felt perception. Most people are born not with great felt perception, but an alchemist has a heightened state of felt perception. And so can really feel what's going on. And when an alchemist as a child looks at the family, they see two things going on simultaneously. They see this condition and this behavior and go, this doesn't make any sense. Your heart is broken, but you're behaving like you're having a happy day. I don't understand. It doesn't compute, right? It's the same as if you really go into an indigenous community that is really heart-based, and you're from a Western civilized country, and you go in and you talk to them, they like get confused because you're saying one thing and feeling another. And they go, right? So the child of an alchemist as a child can sense the discomfort in the family, right? And that the family isn't attending to it, paying no attention to it. It's very strange. And so an alchemist as a child will ask a question like this. Was I adopted and no one told me? Because these people are really freaky. I'm actually not sure I'm on the right planet. Right? So that's the kind of perception an alchemist has, because it's very strange for a being to enter the world of a doer. Right? So very strange. And so what an alchemist does is, as soon as possible, as soon as they have the means, they leave. And get out. I'm like, right? Run away from the family and like, I don't want to have anything to do with these people. Right? And then the alchemist will seek out another family. Right? Like, where's my family? I call it seeking out the tribe. Tribe is a great word. Tribe. Someone will help me to try and be, right? It's the tribe. And so I may come across some like New Age group or something, some people doing metaphysics. Oh, I do aromatherapy. Oh, that sounds interesting, right? Or I'm doing Reiki. Ooh, okay. So all these like weird, the metaphysics, right, will be very attractive to the alchemist. Like, I want to figure out how this works. And eventually they will figure out all this stuff and go, I figured it all out. I know exactly what's going on, right? And then go home to the family and go, hey everybody, I figured it all out and I've come to fix you all. Right? And that's the dinner at Thanksgiving that doesn't go down very well, right? Because actually the family doesn't want to be fixed because they're not broken. The mirror doesn't want to be fixed just because you see pimples in it. Doesn't mean the mirror has a problem, right? And it's very hard for us to comprehend that, because the family is going to be the clearest reflection of the work that we've come to do. It's a level of it, right? And the nature of it is this. The family don't know what they're reflecting. The nature of it, the very important part about doing the family work is this. It's not personal. It's not personal. You take it personally, it's very hard to do the work. Yes, it's going to impact us personally, because personally we're going to feel the punch in the solar plexus of the emotional triggers that come up, right? The hurt, the betrayal, the abandonment, right? The abuse, all of that stuff. But realize that this is a stream of energetic circumstance that has been flowing from generation to generation to generation. And as it goes back, it gets darker, right? And it's flowed to this point, and now it's at a point where an alchemist can arrive in the midst and transform it. And the hard thing about being an alchemist is, for the most part, you have no idea that you're an alchemist. You just think, I must be an extraterrestrial. That's why we're so attached to this thing about UFOs. If I can just find a spaceship that actually that I can leave the planet completely, love that, right? Okay. So, but the task of the alchemist is to stand in the center. Right? Stand in the center. And each aspect of the family is a reflection of the attributes of the alchemist's experience. In other words, as an alchemist, we have 4 attributes to our experience. We have the vibrational, right? We have the physical, we have the mental, we have the emotional. These are 4. That's the only cross you need to bear is the one the family is going to deliver to you, right? Okay. And so this vibrational is the father. This physical is the mother matter, right? This mental, that's the brother. This emotional, that's the sister. And those are so the attributes of the family. A family is a designed matrix to reflect the condition of various of the attributes of the emotional body of the alchemist. The alchemist has has the wiring to transform it. In other words, what transforms this? The capacity to feel it. The alchemist is born with a heightened capacity to feel. It's and is therefore more sensitive. It's a very challenging world for sensitive beings, right? The family's task is not to transform any of this. The family's task is to reflect what's happening in that generational stream that requires transformation, right? And the family is devoted to their task. They're absolutely devoted, right? They will trigger an awareness of it at any given opportunity, right? And so if I look, for example, at and we don't even have to know what this is about, but we can go into it if we want to understand it, right? But actually, it's just about looking at my father. So bring up an awareness of your father. Bring up an awareness of your father. Not as a physical person or as a story you tell yourself, but as a feeling. What is the feeling that comes up? If it is an uncomfortable feeling, if it is a feeling that entails fear, anger, and grief, that is what is required for you to integrate in order to fully attend, to become fully available to your own inner guidance. You see, we have a relationship with God that we made up. Just like I made up a relationship with myself. You know, I made myself up to relate to the world. Also, through religious and spiritual indoctrination, I made up a relationship with God. I made up a relationship with God usually based on getting me out of this. I want a God that can get me out of this, right? That can save me from this. It'll do something, right? So I have a relationship with God. I actually made my relationship with God up, or it was imposed on me by my religion, or my family, whatever. My authentic relationship with what God is for me resonates to how I feel when I bring up an awareness of my birth father. That's my authentic way I feel about God. Right? Get real with that. And when I clear that emotional imprint, when I integrate that and I go into the alchemy, that will awaken the capacity for me to be fully open to inner guidance. Wherever I still believe that my guidance comes from one of you, from a book, from some organization, from somewhere outside of me, is where I'll be in dissonance with God, with my relationship with my birth father. That's how that reflects, right? The moment I awaken my inner guidance and embrace my inner guidance, I don't need a priest, I don't need an intermediary, I have a direct relationship with God. The moment I awaken that, watch what happens with my way I relate to my birth father. There will be a resonance of peace there. It's the same with my mother, right? My mother is a reflection of nurturing. Wherein I'm unable to nurture myself, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally, but wherein I'm unable to and unwilling to nurture myself, I will be in dissonance with my birth mother. If I'm in dissonance with my birth mother, so bring up your mother. What's the feeling that surfaces when you bring up an awareness of your mother? That feeling, that emotional signature, if it's uncomfortable, right, is what's standing between you and being able to fully nurture yourself. When I go in and be with that emotional signature at the causal point, just be with it without condition. Stop trying to change my mother, understand my mother, reason with my mother, but go internally and be with that emotional signature, right? And allow that to come to a point of resolution. What that'll do is it'll bring me the experiences I require to teach myself how to nurture myself, to build self-nurturing, right? It's hypocritical and arrogant, actually, to go around saying, save Gaia, save the Mother Earth, right? And I can't sit at home in peace with my birth mother? Because there's my relationship with my birth mother and my relationship with my earth, that's the true relationship. If I want to know really how I feel about being in this physical material world, how I really feel about being here truly, just bring up an image of my mother. Whatever resonance comes up, that's how I really feel about this Mother Earth, right? And so what integrating these signatures are is to release us of the structure we call the family, to dismantle it, right? That's when someone says to Jesus, your mother's calling you, and he says, well, who's my mother, dude? Who's my father? Who's my brother? Who's my sister? What are you talking about, right? Anyone, right, who vibrates with me in this, right, at this causal point, anyone who's taking responsibility for life, this is my family. We're all family. Anyone who vibrates to love, that's my family. Love is what makes us family, right? Love isn't what keeps a family together in this world. If love kept us together as family, we'd all be family. The fact is, what keeps us together is dysfunction. There are only dysfunctional families. What keeps a group of souls clinging to each other and forcing each other to play and identify certain roles, that's because of a dysfunctional definition of what love is. This shirt, this bangle, this body, this floor that I'm walking on, this bag that I have, the bottle of water I drink out of, the water that I drink, all is given to me by my mother, by the earth. Everything I require to be in this physical world is provided by my mother. Everything, right? How can I expect isolate one woman and say, you're going to play that role for me? That's a bit heavy, right? So when we integrate the emotional signatures that our family brings up to us, what we do is we're going to dismantle that relationship, that way of relating to, right? Laying those trips on the people, right? You're my mother, you're my father, right? Because actually, we're all brothers and sisters. But until we release ourselves of those emotional signatures, we play those roles. An example in my life is this, right? I traveled for 9 years around, trying to sort my pain out and going and looking for my other family and doing metaphysics, right? And finding my tribe to try and be, and going through all those experiences, phenomenal experiences, right? Fantastic. And after 9 years, I go home to South Africa, right? Here I am, the guy who knows everything, right? And I arrive there and my mother invites me over for lunch, right? So I go over to my mother's and we're having lunch. She says, so what have you been doing for the past 9 years? So of course I fall for it and I start expressing myself. Wow, aromatherapy, sound and light therapy, shamanic retrieval, soul retrieval, extraction of consciousness from a time-based paradigm, fire chief in the Native American church, right? Presence, process, procedure, right? And it probably takes me an hour to get through it all. And afterwards she kind of looks up and says, so you mean you've really been doing nothing for 9 years, right? And in that moment I died. And not only did I die, but I wanted to take her with me. Right? And I realized that it was a terrible, painful experience, right? Because I went, well, a couple of days later, and I confessed to my sister that I wanted to kill my mother. My sister got really worried, right? So she invited my mother over and said, look, you guys need to sort this out. So my mother and I sat next to the swimming pool, which is interesting. We sat next to a body of water. We sat there, and so she was like really upset because she didn't know what was going on. She was just being who she was, right? And I was like saying all these things and everything. So I said to her, you've never supported me. You've never told me you love me. Any work I've ever done, you've never paid attention to. I was editor of a magazine. I don't think you ever read one of those magazines, right? And through that, we ended our relationship. We broke up, right? And we decided sitting next to the pool that we would start over, right? And in starting over, I awoke into what discernment was. Discernment is you don't have to ever lie to your mother. You don't have to tell her everything. In fact, your mother doesn't want to know everything, right? So what I did was I stopped talking to my mother about my work because I realized that I was only doing so to get her approval so that she would nurture me, I realized the nurturing thing. And so I started to ask, well, how can I nurture myself? And that's where I went into spending a lot more time on my own, right? I spent a lot of time on my own. I was involved in facilitating people during the day, but in the evenings and on the weekends, I stayed by myself. And when I felt kind of lonely, I would go, oh, you're quite lonely today. How would you like to go out to a movie with me, right? Or I'd buy myself flowers. Or I'd take myself out to dinner, right? Go on a date with myself. Take you out, right? And I started having a really intimate relationship with myself. And being with myself and being able to sit there at home alone and just, okay, I feel really lonely now, but you know what, I'll be with myself. And then I discovered what today is the most profound tool. And I'm still exploring this tool, right? And to me, it's more powerful than any other tool I've discovered. And that is, whenever we go into a bathroom, there's a mirror. And in fact, every one of us stand in front of the mirror every day, at least once or twice. And there's a thing about being in front of the mirror. What I realized was, there's a part of me that doesn't know that it's a mirror. It doesn't. It just sees another person there, right? A person who often shows up, who's there almost every day, but never pays much attention, right? Like, wow. Never pays any attention to me, right? Always, doing stuff, covering your face with stuff or whatever, but never like actually communicating with me. So I decided to use the mirror as a way to establish a relationship with myself. And I started talking to myself in the mirror, but like really talking to myself. And it took a while. It was kind of strange to do that, right? And I started talking to myself because I realized that when something really good happened in my life, I would always tell somebody else. I'd like, you know what happened? This great thing happened. I got a book published. Wow, But I would never tell myself. Never told myself what was going on. Or if something bad happened, I'd pick up the phone and go, it's really hard. I don't know what to do about it. But I would never tell myself. And so I started this practice of, I would go and tell myself first. Tell myself first what's going on. Right? And even to this day I use it, and I even explore the mirror more. Because I realize there's a large contingent of me that is not on board. That has been sabotaging me for a long time. Like I plan to do this, and suddenly that manifests to get in my way, and it's kind of sabotaging. I go, hang on a moment. It's time to get myself on board here, right? So now what I do is, for example, when I finish this presentation today, at some point this evening, I'm going to go into the bathroom, whether it's to shower or go and use the toilet, and there's going to be a mirror. And so I'll go to the mirror, and I'll look in the mirror and I'll say, you're the man. Dude, you're the man. Wow, brilliant presentation. I love that insight that came up there. I never saw that coming. That was a genius, right? Because if I don't do that for myself, I will start behaving unconsciously around you to get you to do that for me. I will create drama so that you tell me how good I am and how wonderful the thing. I will start investing in behaviors designed for that. It's the same thing if something goes wrong, or if I'm having a hard time, right? I go to the mirror and I go, wow, blew it, right? This is like a mess or something, but don't worry, I'll hang with you right through it. I'll tell you, I always take care of it. I might be slow in coming to the ball, but I'll take care of it, right? You can rely on me, right? And now I take it to a different level, right? For example, now I'm deciding that I want to go to Mexico, right? So I go to the mirror and I say, let's go to Mexico. Let's go. Let's get out of here, right? The beach, right? There's a part of us that's really lazy. That's going to be lazy for a while, right? And I get myself on board because I encourage myself to support myself in what it is I'm in, or whatever endeavor I'm entering. And it's profound what happens. It's really profound what happens when I get on board with myself. How I provide everything I require instead of getting in my way, right? So the mirror is a very powerful tool. It's the one tool. I don't breathe every day. I might breathe once a month, right? But I go to the mirror every day and I talk every day. And I pay attention. When I come into the bathroom in the morning and I'm like going for a pee in the morning, right? And I walk out to the bathroom and I go back to the room and I go, hang on a moment. Sorry, good morning. How's it? Right? Don't ignore yourself. Because when you pay attention to yourself, something happens. Something really magical. And see that for yourself in your own experience. Really connect with yourself through the mirror. It's a really an interesting way of finding out how deeply you are connecting with yourself. Right? Because there's talking to yourself in the mirror. And then there's talking to yourself in the mirror, right? And we're told that it's a first sign of madness, talking to yourself. No, it's a first step towards sanity, right? So the family work, I think I've been switched off. No, I'm on still. So the family work is really important because with the family work is going to align these attributes. The attribute of inner guidance through the Father, the attribute of nurturing myself while I'm having this experience in the physical world, in the world of matter, right? Am I able to nurture myself while I'm here? The sister is about self-healing because the sister represents the emotional component. And the emotional component is the causal point of the quality of my experience. If I'm in dissonance with my sister, it's related to where I'm not prepared to take responsibility for the quality of my experience. And if I bring an awareness of my sister up, and I just sit with that, whatever that feeling is there, if it's uncomfortable, by integrating that feeling, I will bring about the experiences that enable me to take a deeper responsibility for the causal point of my experience. My brother is about teaching, about lessons. My brother is about, the essence of my brother is about this. Do I accept my life experience as valid? Do I accept this as my teaching? One of the greatest misinterpretations I think we have been faced with is this saying, I am the light, I am the way, none come to the Father but through me. Damn, we put such a trip on Jesus about that, right? If anything, he was saying, I am is the light. I am is the way. None come to the Father but through the I am. And what is the I am in my experience? It's the I am is the radiance of my experience. My experience is the radiance of the I am. It is my teacher. And if that saying was to be upgraded into this language now, it would be, my experience is the light. My experience is the way. I do not enter vibrational awareness while I'm in the world unless I embrace my experience to be the truth. While I think I should be having another experience, I have gone off the straight and narrow. My experience is the straight and narrow. It is what's required for me to awaken to vibrational awareness while I'm in this world. And the brother aspect of the attribute reflects whether I embrace my experience as the truth or not. On this planet, we will see that there are armies of brothers attacking armies of brothers. Armies of men attacking armies. You don't see armies of women attacking armies of women, right? Women now are getting roped in to the fight, but actually the fight is between brothers. And that fight comes out of a simple non-acceptance of my own experience. If I do not accept my own experience as valid, then I don't accept yours as valid. If I'm manipulating myself and trying to get something else to happen, I'm going to manipulate you, right? Because I think something else should be happening to you. So if I can't accept what's going on with me, how can I accept it in you? And eventually, if you don't change according to the way I think you should change, I will go to war with you the same way I am at war with myself. So the war is really about the mental aspect, the brother aspect. Only when I become at peace with my experience, being at peace with my experience is not to be like I'm in the peace. Being at peace with my experience is I'm at peace with the realization that what unfolds for me is what's required, and that's my greatest teaching in this moment. And can I respond to that? That brings peace into my experience, right? And then I will be at peace with my brother. I'll be at peace with my brother. So the family is to show us that. And when we go and do that level of the work, and we stand in the midst of that cross, because I was saying that's the only cross we need to bear, father, mother, sister, brother. when I stand in the midst of that and I integrate those emotional signatures, I don't even have to understand the attributes, right? The mental body will want to know, well, what does the mother represent? And what does the father represent? And what? No. All I have to do is bring up an awareness of my father, my birth father. What is that feeling? What is that emotional signature? Where do I feel that within my being? Let me be with that without condition. Let me visit that often. Let me visit that every day for a few moments and just be with it. And allow that to come to a point of resolution. As that comes to a point of resolution, and I'll know it's come to a point of resolution, because no matter what the interaction is with my father, when I look upon my father, there will be nothing but gratitude. Nothing but gratitude. Because I will realize the gift that this mirror has given me. I will also release that individual, whether they are in this world or not, from having to be that reflection for me. And in releasing them from having to be that reflection, I completely transform the way I relate. And peace enters the family. Right? And that person is no longer my father. I've established my authentic father, my internal guidance with the vibrational. I've released that soul from playing that role. So in that way, the family is dismantled, and that's why Jesus says, who is my mother? Who is my father? I've done that work in which I've released those people from playing those roles. All men and women are now my brothers and sisters. There are only children, and that's the thing is, there is no scripture that you will read anywhere that says, and God created the adults. There are no adults. Children created adults. Adults are dead children. Right? So there are only children of the vibrational. We're all children. We all have the same parents. We all have the same father and mother. We're all brothers and sisters. And that's the family. That's the authentic family. So again, we dismantle our inauthentic family. It's not that you have nothing to do. Okay, I have nothing to do. I've dismantled. No, actually, once we resolve those emotional signatures within ourselves, we will have an intimate experience with our family that we maybe never thought was possible. Right? It actually brings us closer to them. So that's a next level of the work, is attending to the family, which enables us to look at those attributes. Right? And once we've done the family work, it's also a good time to maybe have a little bit more tea and cookies. So let's take a break for a while. Okay.